This podcast is brought to you by the Center for Innovation in Campus Mental Health, also known as CICMH. We work with campuses and community organizations in Ontario to address the mental health needs of students. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Mental Health on Campus podcast. My name is Megan, and I will be your host for today. In this episode, we're joined by Sophia Carnavale, a 20-year-old belonging to the Mohawk Nation and member of the Wolf Clan from Six Nations of the Grand River. Sophia is currently in her fourth year of public health at Brock University, where she's also pursuing a minor in Indigenous Studies. Sophia's work is rooted in the intersection of Indigenous knowledge and public health, where she is committed to creating more inclusive and equitable health outcomes for Indigenous communities. She demonstrates this commitment in her roles as the Indigenous Policy Intern for the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, the Southern Youth Director for the Ontario Native Women's Association, and through her ongoing work supporting Indigenous students at Brock's Haudenosaunee First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Student Center. Today, we will be talking about the benefits of students being involved and accessing Indigenous student services on campus. Through these conversations, we will discuss the importance of connection to Indigenous culture and well-being as an Indigenous student entering post-secondary. Nyawa, and thank you so much for joining us, Sophia. Can you share a little bit about your background and where you grew up?
Yeah, sure. I was born in Toronto and I was raised there for a couple years, and then my family moved to the Niagara region, and I've lived here ever since. I didn't even go away for school, so Niagara is definitely the home for me. I grew up surrounded by a lot of different cultures. Like you said, I am Mohawk from Six Nations, but we went to powwows as a kid and socials and feasts. My grandparents were huge influences on my life and took care of me as I was growing up, and they were huge people of culture. So they definitely influenced my love of culture.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really great to hear. So how have those early experiences, as you mentioned, with your grandparents, shaped the way that you navigate your identity today?
I've always been very proud of being Indigenous, and I've never felt like I've always been able to share that with other people, and I feel like my identity has been pretty strong over the years. I'm just moving to post-secondary and Brock University. I just found like my strength in my identity definitely like grown and like it's evolved. I would say like as a kid, like they would ask me like the forums would ask me questions like, "Oh, are you First Nations?" And I would be like, "No, I'm Six Nations. Duh."
Right.
So but like I've learned a lot over the years and I'm very proud of where I'm at today. I'm very thankful for my family in shaping my experiences and growing me up with my culture and other cultures. So I'm very grateful for the way that I've been brought up.
Mhm. Great, awesome. So as we mentioned in our introduction, you were involved at the Haudenosaunee First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Student Center at Brock. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how you came to know the center and what your experiences was like as a first year student?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely as a first year student, post-secondary environment seemed very daunting. It was a huge transition from high school. During my first year, I visited the center several times, often looking for a quiet place to study. But over the next couple months, I became a regular, and by January, I frequented the space so often that the director offered me a part-time job as a peer assistant. At the time, I was just expected to little things like staff the space and welcome visitors, support students as their peer, but slowly over the years, I've took on more responsibility and I've started running workshops, attending recruitment events, and even conferences. Even in my second year, I worked closely with our event coordinator to coordinate Brock's first official powwow. And in my third year, I took more responsibility as a graphic designer, lead of marketing, and powwow assistant. So I've just been very involved in the center, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunities that they have gave me to just grow and learn.
Wonderful. Great. Um, so can you just tell us a little bit more about how the Indigenous services on campus supported your mental health and just overall well-being?
Yeah, I think having that connection on campus really helps my mental health. Like I said, as first year and as everyone knows, it's a little daunting. You're like the new person in the school, you don't really know what's going on. But having that safe space I could go to and learn more information and make friends and go to workshops and get help with my like tutoring and that sort of thing. It really helped. It really helped me have that like positive mental health. Um, so I'm very appreciative of the center.
For sure, for sure. So was there any like specific programs or events that stood out to you?
That's a really good question. I would say, like before I got super involved in the center, they would run a lot of like students for students workshops, so run students for students. And just doing those and meeting the other students who like identify as Indigenous, or maybe they were just visiting the center and they don't hold that identity, but just like meeting new people and having that support, especially if I met a lot of like first year students who were going through the same thing as me, and it was so great.
Mm, Great, great, awesome. So have you used any off-campus supports for your mental health or for connecting with your culture?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple things. So I do utilize off-campus supports for like a psychotherapist and that sort of thing. I find it to be very helpful. I think there is no shame in getting help for your mental health, and everyone needs it.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
I'm very happy to use that. But I also like there's so many community supports just in the Niagara region, as there are in many other communities. I frequent the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center. Um, I've done work with like Des Droits de Desney, the Aboriginal Health Circle, and a bunch of other places. I just feel like the Niagara Indigenous community really helps lift up everyone, and there's just so many supports out there, whether that's workshops or like um food markets and pantry fills and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Okay, great, awesome. Um, so why do you think it's important for future or current Indigenous students attending post-secondary to visit their Indigenous Student Center on campus?
I think it's so important. I think if you're looking for that sense of identity and that safe space, that's one of the best places to go. Through my job at Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, I've talked to many Indigenous student centers across our membership schools, and I really do feel that like every center has it's the same idea, and they're just so supportive and so uplifting, and there's just so many resources that you can access. They just, yeah, they'll be able to point you in the right direction if you're struggling with anything, school, mental health, addictions, anything like that. Yeah, I don't know what I'd do without the center.
For sure, for sure. So how or what would you say to someone who's feeling unsure or hesitant about walking through those front doors for the first time?
I would say, I would say you could like if you have a friend that you went into your first year or you've met through first year, bring them by. The Indigenous Student Centers are welcoming to everyone of any identity, and just show them the space, take a look around, talk to some people. Um, at Brock, we have a like campus fair and for orientation, and the Indigenous Student Center is always set up there. So if you ever see them around campus, set up at a booth, just go ahead, go say hi, go see what's available for you. I promise no one will bite. Everyone's super nice, and I really cannot emphasize enough just how important it is to make that connection. I know it's a little scary, but you just gotta do it. It'll help you so much in the long run.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So can you just build off of like why is it important in your opinion as a Indigenous student to have that mental health supports on campus that incorporate Indigenous ways of knowing?
Okay, yes. As Indigenous people, we've gone through a lot of trauma, whether that be our own or intergenerational, and I just really think it's important to confront that and work on that, especially with the Indigenous ways of knowing. I know a couple campuses around Ontario and even Canada have Indigenous counselors and trauma-informed counselors and that sort of thing, and I think it's really important to utilize those. It's mental health care is different for everyone. And I think as an Indigenous person, Indigenous identified person, you should take advantage of the Indigenous ways of knowing and that sort of thing. I think just combining both the Western ways and the Indigenous knowledge ways is it will only benefit everyone.
For sure. Great. Okay. So do you have any words of encouragement for Indigenous students who might be listening? What kind of advice would you like to give them?
I would just really give them that push to get involved on their campuses and to get help for their mental health. There's nothing wrong with that. We all need help. And I would just give them the advice that, like, they can do this. They can do this. There's so many resources to take advantage of in your campus and your community. Post-secondary is hard, but you will do this. You got this. Um, yeah.
Yes, def for sure. So, what would you like non-Indigenous service providers to understand about the importance of incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing?
I would say acknowledgement of traumas and disparities specific to Indigenous peoples, and then moving forward with that and creating a space to support Indigenous peoples, uplift Indigenous peoples, and provide those equitable services to help us all.
hmm Thank you. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you once again, Sophia, for sharing your story and insight with us today. In this episode, we heard about Sophia's journey growing up off reserve in Toronto in the Niagara region, how a search for a quiet, steady place led her to the Indigenous Student Center in her first year, and how that connection grew into a leadership role, supporting other Indigenous students on campus. We also explored the vital role that culturally rooted spaces and supports play in fostering well-being, belonging, and representation in post-secondary environments. If you'd like to learn more about how to support Indigenous students on campus, please visit our website at campusmentalhealth.ca. See you next time for another episode of Mental Health on Campus. Until then, take care. Ona.